I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension. Cue the truth. Let's get into it. Sometimes the clearest warning is not what your partner does, but how comfortable they're doing it in front of you. In this story, the problem is not sunscreen. It is public disrespect, followed by private blame. When somebody embarrasses you, watches you absorb it, and then calls your reaction a real issue, pay attention. That is usually the moment your body understands something your heart has been trying to excuse for months. My name is Malcolm Reed, and the summer my marriage cracked open, Detroit was in one of those humid stretches where the sidewalks seemed to sweat before noon. I was 34, working as a city transit planner downtown, and I had gotten into the habit of ironing my shirts on Sunday nights while old jazz played from a radio I inherited from my father. My wife, Sarai, used to tease me for that routine. "You act 82, she would say, laughing from the bedroom doorway. What I did not understand then was how often she only liked the parts of me that made her feel unbothered, supported, and centered. Sarai was 32, a dental hygienist with bright, careful hands and a way of entering a room like she had every right to be noticed first. People loved her quickly. She remembered birthdays, wore a perfume that lingered after she left, and could turn a grocery store checkout line into an audience. At church on holidays, older women would pull me aside and tell me I was blessed. At first, I thought so too. She made life feel louder than the one I had built for myself, and I mistook loudness for warmth. That mistake cost me more time than I like to admit. If you have ever ignored a red flag because the relationship looked good from the outside, pause here and tell me in the comments what stood out first. And if you want more raw relationship stories with betrayal, consequences, and real emotional payoff, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you do not miss the next one. We met at a winter coat drive in Midtown, 6 years before everything ended. She was helping sort donations, standing near a folding table with a knit cap pulled low and a hot chocolate balanced on a box of children's gloves. I noticed her because she was arguing with a volunteer about whether tiny puffer jackets counted as heavy coats. She noticed me because I was the man who found more boxes when nobody else moved. Later, she told me she fell for my steadiness. I fell for what looked like generosity, confidence, and ease. We married 3 years after that. The first year of marriage was crowded with ordinary sweetness. Saturday mornings at Dooley's place for breakfast, her feet in my lap while we watched old courtroom shows. Small arguments about toothpaste caps and thermostat settings that ended in somebody laughing first. We rented a brick duplex on the west side with squeaky hardwood floors and a backyard that leaned slightly toward the alley. Sarai started a little herb garden in mismatched pots. I bought a blue ceramic pitcher from Easter Market and kept fresh flowers in it because she said a home should look like people were glad to return to it. I do not tell this story as a man who was fooled by a villain. That would be easier, but it would not be true. Sarai was not cruel every day. She could be thoughtful in ways that made your chest ache. She packed my lunch when I had long public meetings. She called my mother after her knee surgery, before I remembered to. She cried during documentaries about underfunded schools. The problem was not that she had no tenderness. The problem was that her tenderness arrived when it cost her nothing, and her disrespect arrived whenever attention was available. Looking back, I can find the smaller tears before the whole fabric gave way. If a waiter complimented her dress, she stretched the exchange just a little too long. If a man at a festival recognized her from somewhere, she glowed under that recognition while I stood there holding tickets or food or her purse. She said I was too serious whenever I flinched. "You read so much into everything," she told me once outside a coffee shop in Corktown after she spent 10 minutes touching a barista's forearm while joking about oat milk. I remember apologizing that day, which still embarrasses me. My mother noticed before I did. She noticed because mothers often hear what sons edit out. One Sunday after service, we were eating lemon cake in the fellowship hall basement, and my mother watched Sarai across the room laughing with a deacon's son. She likes being wanted. My mother said quietly. I shrugged it off and defended my wife with the tired loyalty of a man who thinks protecting his marriage means denying what hurts him. She's friendly. I said, my mother gave me a look that was not judgment so much as sorrow. Friendship has edges, she replied. If I had a stronger language then, maybe things would have changed sooner. Instead, I made myself reasonable. I told myself marriage required flexibility. I told myself not every discomfort meant danger. I told myself a modern husband should not be threatened by charm, by beauty, by harmless attention. My self-talk sounded mature, but it was mostly fear dressed as character. I did not want to be the kind of man who monitored, accused, or controlled. Because I feared becoming that man, I slid too far in the other direction, and became a man who kept swallowing his own instincts until even I stopped hearing them clearly. Sarai's closest friend, Nia, did not help. Nia was one of those polished women who wore matching sets to casual brunch and spoke about people as though she were reviewing them for defects. She lived in a condo in South Loop, Chicago, worked in medical sales, and treated our marriage like a reality show she could comment on. Malcolm is stable, she once said in front of both of us, lifting her mimosa as if she were complimenting me. That is rare. I support stability. Sarai laughed so hard she snorted. I smiled because I was raised with manners. Inside, I shrank. Still, there were moments when I chose marriage on purpose. That matters. One spring, I was offered a project position in Minneapolis that would have pushed my career forward 2 years early. It meant better pay and less office politics. I wanted it. Sarai did not. She said she had finally built seniority at her clinic and would not start over in another state. We sat at our kitchen table with takeout containers between us, and I made a decision that could have gone differently. I turned the offer down because I believe marriage sometimes meant being the one who bends. I chose us. She accepted that choice like the weather. Another decision came a year later, when I found messages on her tablet while trying to look up a banana pudding recipe for my Aunt Repeat dinner. I was not snooping. The screen lit up, and there it was, a thread with a former co-worker named Darnell. Nothing explicit. Too much familiarity anyway. He called her Trouble, she wrote. Only if you know what to do with it. I sat there in the kitchen with vanilla wafers on the counter and grief clothes hanging in the other room, deciding whether to confront, to leave, or to pretend. I chose confrontation. Softly. She chose laughter. That is flirting to you? She said, leaning against the refrigerator, arms folded. Malcolm, please. Her voice turned my hurt into something childish. You are so literal. It is a joke. I asked her to set clearer boundaries. She rolled her eyes and said, I married you, didn't I? That line worked on me longer than it should have. Married men are taught to treat the legal fact as proof of emotional safety. I let the conversation end there because my aunt had just been buried, because I was tired, because part of me wanted peace more than truth. That was another choice. Summer came hard that year, all sirens and ice cream trucks, and the smell of hot pavement rising from the avenue. Sarai became obsessed with being outdoors. Rooftop events, day parties, river walks, boat invitations from people neither of us knew well. I like quieter things. Early bike rides on Bell, aisle before the traffic thickened. Tomato sandwiches. Tigers games on television with the sound low. She said I was becoming older than my age. I said I liked calm. She said calm was another word for boring. I laughed when she said it, but I felt the sentence settle somewhere in me and stay there. In July, Nia invited a group of people to spend a long weekend at her cousin's lake house near New Buffalo, Michigan. It was one of those modern rentals with pale wood floors, huge windows, and decorative bowls nobody was supposed to touch. Sarai wanted to go immediately. I hesitated because I had a planning deadline at work, and because group trips with her friends always left me feeling like a +1 in my own marriage. She insisted we needed time away. I agreed, partly to please her and partly because I still believed shared experiences could repair what conversations had not. The drive out there took a little under 4 hours with traffic. Sarai sang along to old Beyoncé in the passenger seat, one hand out the window, nails the color of orange sherbet. We stopped at a gas station outside Kalamazoo, and she bought spicy chips, 2 lemonades, and a ridiculous floppy sun hat. She said made her look wealthy. For stretches of that drive, I let myself hope. She rested her hand on my knee. She asked about my father's doctor appointment. She leaned her head against the seat and smiled at me in a way that looked like the woman I had married. not the one I had been losing. The lake house was immaculate and impersonal, like a luxury furniture catalog with better lighting. The backyard sloped toward a private stretch of sand. A fire pit sat off to one side. Somebody had already filled the refrigerator with hard seltzer, fruit trays, bottled water, and prepared pasta salad in clear containers. The air smelled like sunscreen, cedar decking, and money. There were 8 of us altogether. Me, Sarai, Nia's boyfriend for half the weekend. 2 sisters from her sorority, a man named Everett who sold real estate, and a friend of a friend named Byron who arrived late that night in a silver SUV. Byron mattered later, though at first he seemed like a background. He was 40, divorced, broad-shouldered, careful with his clothes, the kind of man who tucked his t-shirt sleeves just enough to show his watch. He worked in commercial insurance out of Indianapolis and spoke in a soft, practiced voice that made people lean closer. Sarai noticed him right away, not in some cartoon way, in the sharper, subtler way I had come to dread. She adjusted her posture. Her laugh changed pitch. She began saying things with extra sparkle around the edges. I noticed all of it while pretending to rearrange cooler space in the kitchen. That first evening, we grilled salmon and corn while music drifted through the screen door. The women sat around the island with glasses of sangria, talking over one another. Byron offered to help me outside with the grill. I appreciated that. He was not rude to me. In fact, he seemed observant enough to understand dynamics without naming them. Nice place, he said, checking the fish with a spatula. Group trips can get strange, though. I looked at him, wondering what he had already picked up. You have no idea, I nearly said. Instead, I nodded and asked for foil. The next morning I woke early, as I always do, and found the lake completely still, gray-blue under a soft band of clouds. I made coffee before anyone else stirred. There is something almost holy about a sleeping house before trouble fully wakes. I sat on the back steps with my mug, hearing gulls and the distant hum of a boat engine. Sarai eventually came out in one of my old college shirts, hair wrapped in a scarf, and kissed the top of my head. You are hard to stay mad at, she murmured. I had not known she thought I was mad. Was I supposed to be? I asked. She gave a little shrug and sat beside me. You were quiet last night. I told her group settings with Nia's circle were tiring for me. She rested her chin on her knee and said, Then try harder to engage. I cannot manage your comfort every minute. The tenderness evaporated so fast it felt like I had imagined it. I remember staring across the water and deciding not to argue before breakfast. That was another moment that could have gone differently. I chose restraint because I did not want the whole weekend poison before noon. I see the irony now. By afternoon, the sky had cleared into a bright, punishing blue. We carried towels, folding chairs, and a speaker down to the beach. Nia had packed a woven bag with Sunscreen magazines and those tiny metal fans people pretend are practical. Sarai wore a white cover-up over a rust-colored swimsuit and large square sunglasses that made her look inaccessible. Everyone spread out in little islands of conversation. I set up our chairs, planted the umbrella, and offered Sarai sunscreen. She barely looked at me. I am fine for now, she said. You always use too much. She reached for her phone and started scrolling. An hour later, Byron came down from house, carrying a cooler on one shoulder and a stack of canned drinks in the other hand. He handed people water and beer, easy as if he had been part of the group for years. Sarai's face brightened when he stopped near her chair. You are a lifesaver, she said. He smiled and asked if she wanted sparkling water or something stronger. Surprise me, she replied. It was a simple exchange. Harmless on paper. But marriage teaches you the difference between normal friendliness and deliberate invitation. I felt that difference before I could explain it. The flirting that followed was not dramatic enough to justify a scene, which is exactly why it worked on my nerves. She asked him about his divorce in a tone too intimate for a beach acquaintance. He asked whether she had always been this impossible to ignore. Nia laughed like that line deserved an award. Sarai splashed her feet near his and said, I do what I can. I sat 2 chairs away, listening to my own wife perform availability in pieces too small for outsiders to indict. Shame has a strange taste. Mine felt metallic, like pennies under my tongue. I told myself not to react publicly. That was deliberate. My father always said public conflict leaves a stain no apology fully removes. So I stood, walked to the shoreline, and let the water numb my ankles while children farther down the beach shouted over football. I remember thinking that adulthood was supposed to grant cleaner lines than this. Good marriage, bad marriage. Loyalty, betrayal. Respect, disrespect. Instead, it often arrives as ambiguity. Death by 1,000 social moments where the offended person looks unstable if he names what everyone just watched. I stayed in the water because distance felt safer than humiliation. When I returned, Sarai was standing near the chairs with a sunscreen bottle in one hand and her cover-up falling open at the shoulders. She looked directly at Byron and said, "Can you help me get my back?" I always missed the sender. I was 3 steps away, close enough to smell coconut lotion and lake water. I said calm as I could, "I can do it." She turned toward me slowly, like I had interrupted a performance. Then she smiled, but there was no kindness in it. He was just helping me apply sunscreen. If you're jealous, you can walk back to the house. A couple of people laughed the nervous kind of laugh people use when they know a line has been crossed, but do not plan to defend the one it hit. Neil was not nervous. She grinned openly. Byron hesitated for half a beat, bottle in hand, and that half beat told me he understood exactly what this was. Still, he took the sunscreen. Sarai turned her back to both of us. "Get my shoulders, too," she said to him, playful, almost purring. I stood there feeling heat rise in my chest, not explosive, more like a furnace door opening. No one told her to stop. She tilted her head and laughed at something Byron murmured. I did not hear his words. I heard hers clearly. "See? Gentle. Malcolm always rushes." That did it. Not because of the sunscreen. Not even because of him touching her. It was the easy way she used me as the punchline. My marriage had become a room where I was expected to absorb humiliation and then explain why it was not funny. I picked up my keys, my wallet, and the paperback I had not managed to read. Nia called after me, "Do not be dramatic." I kept walking. I did not slam doors or throw bags. I went upstairs, packed quietly, and texted my cousin Aaron, who lived in Benton Harbor, asking if his guest room was free for a night. He answered yes within 2 minutes. That mattered more than he probably knows. I left my wedding ring on the bathroom counter, beside a hotel-sized bottle of lotion from the house. Then I wrote Sarai a note on the back of a grocery receipt. I am not doing this anymore. I set it under her makeup bag, where she would find it later. Then I drove away with shaking hands. The roads through that part of Michigan are beautiful in a flat, deceptively peaceful way. Farm stands, trees bent toward the highway, flags on porches. I barely saw any of it. I kept replaying the beach in loops, trying to decide whether I had overreacted, whether I had failed some modern test of confidence, whether a stronger man would have laughed it off. By the time I reached Aaron's duplex, my thoughts were so tangled I could hardly trust him. He opened the door in gym shorts and a Pistons t-shirt, took one look at my face and said, "Come inside before you explain anything." Aaron and I grew up more like brothers and cousins. He teaches 8th grade history, keeps hot sauce in his glove compartment, and never says more than he means. We sat at his kitchen table while a box fan pushed warm air around the room, and neighborhood kids played basketball in the alley. I told him the whole thing, not just the beach, but the years leading to it. He did not interrupt until the end. Then he said, "Malcolm, that woman has been training you to doubt yourself." He slid a glass of ice water toward me. The beach was just the first time she got lazy. I slept badly in Aaron's guest room. Waking every hour to check a phone I did not want to answer. There were 13 missed calls from Sarai by morning, then texts that shifted tone every few minutes. "Where are you? This is embarrassing. You made everyone uncomfortable. Are you serious right now? Please call me. Malcolm, talk to me." One message said, "You really left over sunscreen?" I stared at that line for a full minute. People often expose themselves most clearly when they summarize your pain in the shallowest way possible. I set the phone face down and went to buy coffee. At a diner near the interstate, with cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who called everyone honey, I made a decision that finally changed my life. Months earlier, my former graduate school roommate Desmond had been trying to recruit me to his planning firm in Philadelphia. Better salary, better trajectory, bigger projects. I had always said no because Sarai did not want to leave Michigan. I called him from the parking lot while trucks hissed past on the wet road. "Are you still looking?" I asked. He answered, "For you? Always." I chose movement that morning because staying still had become its own kind of surrender. I drove back to Detroit on Sunday evening, but not to Sarai. I went to our duplex while I knew she was still likely returning from the lake house. I packed essentials first. Work files, framed photos from before the marriage, my father's radio, 2 suits, my good shoes, the ceramic pitcher, and the shoebox where I keep every handwritten note my mother ever left me. I did not take everything because rage makes people grab too much. I took what felt like identity. Then I booked a week at an extended stay hotel in Dearborn and left before dark, before explanations could soften me. Sarai showed up at my office Tuesday morning. My receptionist called first, voice careful. "Your wife is here. She seems upset." I almost told her to send Sarai away. Instead, I went downstairs because I still believed in ending things with dignity. She stood in the lobby in linen pants and oversized sunglasses, holding herself like a woman wronged. "What is this?" she demanded. "You left your ring on a counter like we are in some cheap movie." I told her we could talk outside. On the sidewalk, with buses signed at the curb, she crossed her arms and said, "You are being cruel." Cruel. That word nearly made me laugh. I asked whether she had read my note. She said yes, but called it melodramatic. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," she said. "By leaving?" I asked. "By making it weird," she snapped. That was Sarai's gift. She could step over the wound and focus on the awkwardness around it. I told her the beach was not an isolated incident. I named Darnell, the constant public flirtation, Nia's disrespect, the way she mocked my discomfort to other people. Sarai's jaw tightened. "So now I am on trial for having a personality?" That conversation ended the marriage more surely than the beach did. Not because she refused to apologize exactly, though she did. It ended because she seemed incapable of recognizing that intimacy without respect rots from the inside. "Byron is grown," she said. "He touched my back, Malcolm. It is skin. It is lotion. Nothing happened." I told her again, that is not the point. She threw up her hands. "Then what is—" I could have kept teaching the lesson. I could have stayed there on that sidewalk arguing definitions with a woman invested in misunderstanding me. I chose not to. "Exactly," I said and walked away. The week that followed was practical in a way heartbreak rarely gets credit for. I spoke to a lawyer about filing. I transferred part of my paycheck into a new account. I made a list of furniture we had bought together and a second list of what I was willing to leave behind for peace. Desmond arranged interviews by video for Thursday and Friday. My mother came to the hotel one evening with fried catfish, greens, and sweet tea in separate containers because she said grief should never have to cook. We ate on the bed watching the local news. She never once said "I told you so." Sarai cycled through tactics. Anger first, then nostalgia, then seduction of memory. She sent photos from our wedding with messages like, "Was this fake to you?" She emailed me a playlist called Home. She left a handwritten letter under my windshield wiper in a hotel lot. 6 pages front and back, talking about stress, misunderstandings, and how people were jealous of what we had. I read the whole thing in my car under a flickering light and noticed what was missing. There was no sentence that said, "I humiliated you." No sentence that said, "I understand why you left." Only pages about her hurt. Desmond's firm offered me the job the following Monday. Their office was in Philadelphia, near Center City, with rail projects, housing studies, and the kind of work I had wanted since graduate school. The salary increase was enough to feel like someone had finally adjusted the lens on my life and brought it into focus. I accepted before fear could start negotiating. When I told my mother, she nodded and said, "Some doors only open after you stop guarding the wrong house." That line stayed with me. I gave notice at work, arranged movers, and filed for legal separation. Movement replaced rumination one task at a time. Sarai came by the duplex the final weekend I was packing. She had her own key, which I had forgotten to retrieve, and I heard her before I saw her, calling my name from downstairs while I wrapped dishes in newspaper. She looked smaller somehow, but not softer. Hurt had sharpened her. "So this is really happening," she said. I told her yes. She started crying then, not theatrically, just deeply and with anger mixed into it. "You're throwing us away over one ugly weekend." I said, "No, I am leaving because that weekend finally matched what the marriage had been feeling like for a long time." She sat on the arm of the sofa and looked around at the half-empty room. "I thought you were solid," she said. "I am," I answered. "That is why I am leaving." She shook her head like I had spoken another language. Then she asked the question that settled everything. "You could not just get over it?" "Not fix it, not understand it. Get over it, past it, around it, through it by myself." I remember looking at the herb pots on the windowsill, most of them dead from neglect, and realizing this was our whole marriage in miniature. She wanted outcomes without tending anything delicate. We signed papers months later. Nothing dramatic. No courtroom scene worth retelling. Just forms, signatures, a mediator, and the dull administrative language people use to close something once called sacred. She kept most of the furniture because I did not want to drag old shapes into a new city. I moved to Philadelphia in late October, when the trees in Fairmount Park had gone copper and gold and the air smelled like leaves and train brakes. Desmond helped me find a narrow apartment with a fire escape and a view of a mural across the alley. The first night there, the silence felt earned. Consequences came for Sarai the way they usually do in real life. Not as thunder, but as accumulation. Nia drifted once there was no married audience left to perform for. Money got tighter on one income. People who had praised Sarai's confidence became less enchanted by the version of her that needed constant admiration. I heard bits through mutual friends and did not chase details. The one thing I learned directly was that she and Byron tried dating for a short time after the separation started. It lasted maybe 6 weeks. He apparently told her she liked mirrors more than people. That sounded about right. My own recovery was less cinematic than people expect. Philadelphia did not heal me just because it was new. Some mornings I still woke up angry. Sometimes a woman laughing across a restaurant made my shoulders tense before my mind caught up. I started seeing a therapist in West Philly, an older black woman with silver braids and a habit of waiting through silence until honesty arrived. She taught me that self-betrayal often masquerades as patience. She asked why I had needed so much proof before trusting my own pain. I did not have a neat answer. I only knew I was tired of requiring disaster before I granted myself permission. It has been almost 3 years now. I still iron my shirts on Sundays. I still play my father's radio. But now, when I place flowers in that blue ceramic pitcher, I do it because beauty belongs in my home whether anyone applauds it or not. Every now and then I think of that beach in New Buffalo, the heat, the laughter, the bottle of sunscreen in another man's hand. I no longer think of it as the day my wife embarrassed me. I think of it as the day denial finally lost its grip. Sometimes freedom enters your life disguised as an insult, and you leave before it finishes speaking. If this story reminded you that disrespect usually starts small before it becomes impossible to ignore, leave a comment with the word respect. Like this video. Share it with a friend who loves powerful relationship drama. And subscribe for more original stories about cheating, betrayal, heartbreak, and karma. The beach mattered, but so did the kitchen table job he turned down, the old messages he explained away, and the sidewalk conversation where she called him cruel for leaving. Those moments show how disrespect grows when it keeps getting translated into something smaller. A lot of damage happens because one person keeps asking to be understood while refusing to understand. Boundaries are not only about what you forbid. They are also about the day you stop volunteering your dignity for another round of explanation. The end.